Liam Stanton had spent years believing he was incapable of having children. It wasn't just a medical fact, it was something he had come to accept, a quiet truth that shaped the way he lived his life. No attachments. No family. Just business, success, and control. But all of that shattered in an instant. It happened in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, in a coffee shop he had visited 100 times before. He had walked in expecting nothing but caffeine and routine. Instead, he saw her, the woman he had loved and lost. And sitting beside her, with identical blonde curls and piercing blue eyes, were two little girls. Twins. His heart stopped. His world tilted. Because even before Ella lifted her gaze and met his with quiet, undeniable recognition, he knew the truth. They were his. And he had never known they existed. Liam Stanton never believed in fate. He believed in control, in strategy, in the idea that every success in life came from careful planning and relentless effort. Nothing had ever been handed to him, and he had built his empire brick by brick, never relying on luck or chance. That's why he didn't believe in miracles, in second chances, or in things happening for a reason. That belief had only solidified 4 years ago when a doctor had given him the news that changed his life: he was infertile. There would be no heir, no child carrying his name, no one to continue his legacy. At first, it had been a shock, but over time, he convinced himself it didn't matter. He had his company, his success, and all the wealth he could ever need. What was the point of mourning something he had never really wanted in the first place? At least, that was the lie he had told himself. Now, at 36 years old, Liam had everything a man could ask for: an empire spanning industries, respect in the business world, and more money than he could ever spend. He was used to expensive suits, elite business meetings, and nights spent in high-end restaurants where waiters knew his name before he even walked through the door. Life was predictable, and he liked it that way. But predictability shattered the moment he stepped into his usual coffee shop one afternoon and saw her. Ella. His chest tightened instantly. It had been 4 years since he had last seen her, but she looked almost exactly the same. Her golden blonde hair still cascaded in soft waves over her shoulders, and her blue eyes still held that quiet strength that had drawn him in so many years ago. She was sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup, lost in thought. But she wasn't alone. Liam's breath caught when he saw them. 2 little girls sat at the table with her, identical in every way. Blonde hair, blue eyes, delicate features that mirrored Ella's. But there was something else, something that made his pulse pound in his ears. Their expressions, the sharpness of their gazes, the way one of them tilted her head slightly as she spoke, it was familiar. Too familiar. His own reflection stared back at him in miniature form. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His mind immediately rejected the possibility. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. And yet, there they were. He stood frozen, unable to move, unable to think. He had walked into this cafe expecting nothing more than an overpriced cup of coffee, another routine moment in his carefully controlled life. Instead, he had walked into a past he thought he had buried, and a future he never imagined could exist. Then, as if she could feel his stare, Ella lifted her head and met his gaze. Her eyes widened slightly, shock flashing across her face before she quickly masked it. But it was too late. She knew he had seen them. She knew he had already figured it out. Liam's heart pounded as he forced his legs to move, closing the distance between them in just a few strides. He stopped at her table, his shadow falling over them as he looked down at the 2 little girls. They were small, delicate, maybe 4 years old. Exactly the amount of time he and Ella had been apart. Ella's hands tightened slightly around her coffee cup, but she lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with the quiet defiance he remembered so well. "Liam," she said, her voice steady, but he could hear the tension beneath it. His throat felt tight, his mind spinning with too many questions to process. He swallowed hard, forcing out the only words that mattered. Are they mine? Ella's lips parted slightly, but no words came. And in that silence, he already knew the answer. Ella's silence told Liam everything he needed to know. The world around him seemed to fade into the background, the hum of conversations, the clinking of coffee cups, the distant sound of the barista calling out orders. None of it mattered. All he could focus on was the woman sitting before him and the two little girls who had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about his life. The twins. His twins. He could feel his pulse pounding, the weight of this moment pressing against his chest like a force he wasn't prepared for. He had spent years believing he could never have children, years convincing himself that it didn't matter. But now, staring at these two small girls with their identical blue eyes, the same shade as his own, he knew that had been a lie. It had always mattered. Finally, Ella exhaled, setting her cup down with careful precision. She glanced at the girls, who were still oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. One of them was playing with a sugar packet, folding it neatly, while the other was absent-mindedly tapping her spoon against the table. They were comfortable. Secure. They had no idea what was happening. Ella turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw something unguarded in her expression. Not fear. Not anger. Just quiet resignation. Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're yours. Liam felt like the ground beneath him had shifted. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind, but none of them made sense. He had prepared himself for every possible scenario in life. Business failures, market crashes, betrayals, success beyond imagination. But not this. Never this. How? He finally asked, his voice rough. I mean. I was told, he stopped himself, shaking his head. It doesn't matter what I was told. You knew. And you never told me. Ella flinched slightly but kept her gaze steady. I wanted to, she admitted. I almost did, so many times. But I knew what your life was like, Liam. I knew what was most important to you. His jaw clenched. You had no right to make that decision for me. She let out a slow breath, glancing at the girls again before lowering her voice. Can we not do this here? Liam's hands curled into fists at his sides. He had never been a man who lost control, but right now, every instinct in him was fighting the urge to demand answers he should have had years ago. But she was right. This wasn't the place. He looked at the twins, really looked at them. They were perfect. How had he missed this? How had 4 years passed without him knowing they existed? One of them, he wasn't sure which, turned her head and looked directly at him. Her bright blue eyes studied him with quiet curiosity, as if sensing something different in the air. Mommy, she asked, tilting her head. Who's that? Ella hesitated for only a second before offering her daughter a small smile. This is Liam, she said gently. An old friend. Liam stiffened. That wasn't what he was. He wasn't just some old friend, he was their father. And she knew it. He forced himself to breathe. This wasn't something he could fix in an instant. As much as he wanted to demand the truth, to fight for the years he had lost, there was something more important right now. The girls. He nodded slightly at the little girl. Hi, he said, keeping his voice calm. What's your name? She hesitated, then grinned. I'm Lily. She pointed to her sister. That's Olivia. Lily and Olivia. His daughters. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his emotions in check. Nice to meet you, Lily. Olivia. Olivia looked up from her spoon, blinking at him. You have blue eyes like us. Liam let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. He was still in shock, but hearing her say it, acknowledging the connection, made something shift inside him. I guess I do, he said. Ella cleared her throat. Liam, she said quietly, drawing his attention back to her. If you really want to talk, tonight. 8 o'clock. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notepad, scribbling something on it before tearing off the page and sliding it across the table. Liam took it without a word. It was an address. Come alone, she added. He met her gaze, reading between the lines. She wasn't ready for him to just step into their lives, not yet. But she was giving him a chance. And for now, that would have to be enough. Liam spent the rest of the day in a daze, his mind unable to focus on anything but the conversation he had just had with Ella. His daughters. He had daughters. The thought felt foreign and overwhelming, as if his entire life had just been rewritten in an instant. No amount of business success, no perfectly laid out plan had ever prepared him for something like this. He sat in his office, staring at the slip of paper Ella had given him. An address. A time. It wasn't just an invitation to talk, it was an opening, a chance to step into the life he had unknowingly missed. But it wasn't just about him. It was about them. The little girls who had no idea who he really was. Who had spent 4 years living in a world without him. And now, he had to figure out how to fix that. By the time evening rolled around, Liam was more nervous than he had ever been in his life. He had walked into boardrooms filled with ruthless executives, faced high-stakes negotiations that determined the fate of multimillion-dollar deals. And yet, none of those moments had ever left his hands trembling the way they were now as he stood outside Ella's house. It was a modest home, nothing extravagant, but warm and inviting. The porch light was on, casting a soft glow over the small front yard. He hesitated for only a moment before taking a breath and knocking on the door. A few seconds later, it opened, and there she was. Ella. She looked different in the soft light, more relaxed than she had been in the cafe. But there was still caution in her expression, a guardedness that told him she wasn't sure if she could trust him yet. She stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. Lily and Olivia are asleep, she said quietly as she led him into the living room. Liam glanced around, taking in the space. There were small signs of them everywhere, tiny shoes lined up near the door, a few stuffed animals scattered across the couch, a framed drawing on the wall that had 2 figures holding hands with the word mommy written above them. His chest tightened. Ella gestured for him to sit, and he did, though he felt strangely out of place. She sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. So, she said after a long pause. Where do you want to start? Liam exhaled slowly, trying to gather his thoughts. There were 1,000 things he wanted to say, 1,000 questions he wanted to ask. But only one mattered right now. Why didn't you tell me? Ella looked down for a moment before meeting his gaze again. I wanted to, she admitted. When I found out I was pregnant, I picked up the phone 100 times. But then I'd remember the way we ended things. You told me yourself that you didn't want a family. That you weren't built for that kind of life. Liam flinched at her words because he had said them. He had believed them back then. I thought I was doing the right thing, she continued. I thought if I told you, you'd feel obligated. And I didn't want that for them. I didn't want them to have a father who was only there because he felt like he had to be. Liam clenched his jaw. That wasn't your decision to make. Her expression hardened slightly. Maybe not. But I had to make it anyway. Silence stretched between them. Liam ran a hand over his face, trying to process everything. He wasn't angry, at least, not in the way he expected to be. He was frustrated, confused, but most of all, he was hurting. Not for himself, but for what had been lost. I missed 4 years of their lives, he said, his voice quieter now. 4 years I can never get back. Ella's face softened slightly. I know, she said. And I'm sorry for that. But they're happy, Liam. They have a good life. I've done my best to give them everything they need. Liam nodded, swallowing against the tightness in his throat. And what about what they need now? He asked. What if they need their father? Ella studied him for a long moment. Then you need to prove that you're ready for that. Liam straightened slightly. How? She sighed. Start slow. They don't know you yet. To them, you're just a stranger. You can't just walk in and expect them to suddenly be comfortable with you. I don't expect that, he said firmly. But I want to be in their lives, Ella. I want to know them. She hesitated but then nodded. All right, she said. We'll start small. You can spend time with them, see how things go. But, Liam, if you do this, you can't back out. You can't disappear. If you're in, you have to be all in. Liam met her gaze, knowing this was the moment that defined everything. He had built his life around careful decisions, around never committing to something unless he was absolutely sure. But for this, there was no hesitation. I'm in, he said. Completely. Ella held his gaze for a few more seconds before finally nodding. Then let's see where this goes. And just like that, Liam's life changed forever. The next morning, Liam woke up feeling different. It wasn't just the knowledge that his entire life had changed overnight, it was the weight of responsibility, the reality that he was now a father to 2 little girls who didn't even know him. The thought both terrified and grounded him in a way nothing else ever had. For years, he had lived his life with clear direction, moving from one success to another, never looking back. But now, there was something more important than business deals and corporate expansion. There were 2 small lives he had a chance to be part of, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure what his next move should be. Later that afternoon, he drove back to Ella's house. She had agreed to let him meet the girls properly, but she had been firm in her expectations, no pressure, no overwhelming introductions. Just a casual visit. Liam wasn't sure what a casual visit looked like when meeting his daughters for the first time, but he was willing to follow her lead. When he arrived, he hesitated for a moment before stepping out of the car. He had closed multi-million-dollar deals, negotiated with some of the most ruthless businessmen in the world, and yet nothing had ever made his hands shake like this. Ella opened the door before he could knock, glancing at him with an expression that was unreadable. She stepped aside, letting him in, and he was immediately hit with the warmth of a home. It was nothing like his sleek, modern penthouse. It was filled with soft colors, framed drawings on the walls, and a sense of comfort that he had never known in his own space. He followed Ella into the living room, where the twins were sitting on the floor, surrounded by crayons and coloring books. They were so small, so unaware of the magnitude of what was happening. Ella cleared her throat. Girls, we have a visitor today. Both of them looked up, their identical blue eyes locking onto him. Lily, the more expressive one, tilted her head slightly. Olivia simply blinked, observing him in quiet curiosity. Liam crouched down to their level, his heart pounding. Hey, he said, his voice softer than he had expected it to be. I'm Liam. Lily looked at Ella first, as if for permission, then back at him. You were at the cafe, she said. He nodded. Yeah, I was. Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Ella let out a quiet laugh. Because he's an old friend of mine, and he wanted to meet you both. Lily shrugged, seemingly satisfied with that answer, and went back to her coloring. Olivia, however, continued watching him, her small brows furrowing. Do you like coloring? Lily asked suddenly, holding up a crayon. Liam hesitated. I haven't colored in a long time. Lily handed him a blank sheet of paper as if that was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. You can start now. Ella raised an eyebrow at him, clearly amused, but said nothing. Liam took the crayon she offered and sat down properly, adjusting to the unfamiliar situation. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but for now, all that mattered was that they were letting him be there. They colored in silence for a while, Lily chattering occasionally about which colors were best for which parts of the picture. Olivia remained quiet but kept stealing glances at him when she thought he wasn't looking. After a while, Ella spoke. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" Liam looked up at her, surprised. He hadn't expected to be invited to stay, not yet. But if she was offering, he wasn't about to turn it down. "I'd like that," he said. Dinner was a simple affair, spaghetti, which, as he quickly learned, was a favorite of both girls. Lily talked the entire time, telling him about her favorite cartoons, her stuffed animals, and how she didn't like green beans. Olivia remained more reserved, but by the time they were done eating, she was no longer watching him with suspicion. As he helped clear the dishes, he realized something. He had spent years thinking he wasn't meant for this kind of life, that he wasn't built to be a father. But sitting there, surrounded by messy plates and the sound of Lily giggling at something Olivia had whispered, he felt something settle inside him. He wanted this. He wanted them. And for the first time, he understood that no amount of money or power could ever compare to the chance of being their father. Over the next few weeks, Liam found himself adjusting to a life that was completely different from the one he had known. He had spent years in a world of high-stakes business, where every decision was calculated and every move was planned in advance. But being around Lily and Olivia was nothing like that. There was no script, no strategy, just unpredictable, messy, and sometimes overwhelming moments that left him feeling more out of control than he ever had in his entire life. Ella had been cautious about letting him spend time with them, and he understood why. She was protective, and she had every right to be. He had missed 4 years of their lives, and trust wasn't something that could be built overnight. But he was determined to prove that he was serious, that he wasn't just showing up out of curiosity or guilt. He was here to stay. At first, his time with the twins was limited to short visits. He would come over in the afternoons, playing simple games with them in the backyard or sitting with them at the kitchen table while they colored. Lily warmed up to him quickly, asking endless questions about where he lived, what he did, and why he had never colored before. Olivia remained more reserved, watching him carefully, as if trying to figure out whether or not she could trust him. One afternoon, he arrived at Ella's house to find Lily waiting for him at the door, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "Mommy said we can go to the park today," she announced before he even had a chance to say hello. Liam glanced at Ella, who stood behind her with a small, knowing smile. "As long as you think you can handle both of them," she said. Liam hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I think I can manage." Ella gave him a skeptical look but handed him the small backpack she had packed with snacks and extra clothes. "Good luck." Taking the twins to the park was unlike anything Liam had ever done before. He had been in control of boardrooms, had negotiated with some of the most powerful people in the world, but somehow, trying to keep up with 2 energetic 4-year-olds was more exhausting than any business deal he had ever closed. Lily ran ahead as soon as they arrived, climbing onto the jungle gym with ease, while Olivia took her time, watching the other kids before finally deciding to follow. Liam stayed close, making sure they were safe, but also realizing how little he knew about this world. He had never needed to think about playground rules, about making sure they didn't climb too high or wander too far. At one point, Lily called out to him. "Push me on the swing." He walked over and gently pushed her, watching as she kicked her legs, her laughter filling the air. Olivia stood nearby, watching quietly. "Do you want a turn?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I like the slide better." Liam nodded. "All right. Want me to go with you?" She studied him for a moment before giving a small nod. He followed her to the slide, watching as she climbed to the top and sat down. She hesitated just for a second before sliding down, landing on her feet and turning back to look at him. "Your turn," she said. Liam raised an eyebrow. "You want me to go down the slide?" Olivia giggled. Yes. Lily, who had overheard, ran over. You have to, Daddy. It's a rule. Liam froze. She had said it so naturally, so effortlessly, as if the word belonged to him. He felt his chest tighten, his heart pounding as he looked at her. She didn't seem to realize what she had said. Olivia didn't react either, as if it was completely normal. But for Liam, it was everything. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to smile. All right, he said, climbing up the small steps and sitting at the top of the slide. Here goes nothing. As he slid down, the twins burst into laughter, clapping their hands. Liam landed at the bottom, shaking his head. I think I might be too big for that. Lily giggled. No, you're not. Olivia grinned, her usual hesitation gone. You have to do it again. Liam laughed, shaking his head. How about we get ice cream instead? Both girls cheered at the suggestion, and as they ran ahead, Liam felt something shift inside him. For so long, he had believed that his life was complete, that he had everything he needed. But now, as he watched Lily and Olivia run toward the ice cream stand, he realized just how wrong he had been. He hadn't known what he was missing. But now, he did. And he wasn't going to lose it again. Liam was beginning to understand that being a father wasn't just about showing up. It was about being present, about learning the small details, the things that didn't seem important at first but made all the difference. It was about knowing that Lily liked her sandwiches cut into triangles while Olivia preferred squares. That Lily loved to talk, filling the silence with endless stories, while Olivia took her time, thinking through her words carefully before speaking. That they both hated the dark but would never admit it, always asking for just one more bedtime story to keep the lights on a little longer. He spent more and more time at Ella's house, his visits becoming less structured, more natural. At first, he had been cautious, waiting for Ella to give him permission to be involved, but slowly, things began to shift. She no longer hovered in the background, watching their every interaction. She no longer gave him that wary look, as if waiting for him to change his mind. And the twins, who had once seen him as a stranger, now ran to him the moment he walked through the door. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Olivia suddenly spoke up. Are you coming to my ballet recital? Liam, who had been in the middle of cutting Lily's spaghetti into smaller pieces, looked up. You're what? Ella sighed, giving Olivia a pointed look. We talked about this, sweetheart. We weren't sure if Daddy could make it. Liam's heart clenched at the word. They had talked about it. Which meant Olivia had asked for him. When is it? He asked, setting his fork down. Saturday, Olivia said immediately. Lily, who had been quiet for once, suddenly perked up. And my soccer game is on Sunday. Liam glanced at Ella, who was watching him carefully. You don't have to. I'll be there, he said firmly. Lily's face lit up, and Olivia gave a small, pleased nod. Ella, however, looked uncertain. Are you sure? I know weekends are usually. I'll be there, he repeated, this time looking directly at her. I don't care what I have to move around. I'm not missing it. That Saturday, Liam found himself sitting in a row of folding chairs inside a small dance studio, surrounded by parents who had clearly done this before. He felt out of place, uncomfortable in his suit, the only one not in casual clothes. But when the lights dimmed and the tiny ballerinas walked onto the stage, all of that disappeared. Olivia was easy to spot. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore a pale pink tutu, her little face serious with concentration. She moved carefully, hitting every mark with quiet precision, the complete opposite of the other girls who twirled around with carefree energy. Liam had never seen her so focused before, so determined. And when the performance was over and she spotted him in the audience, her whole face changed. She smiled. A real, wide, proud smile. He had never seen her smile like that before. When she ran to him after the show, he crouched down, bracing himself as she threw her arms around his neck. He held her tightly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "You were amazing, Liv." She pulled back, looking up at him. "You really watched?" Liam frowned. "Of course I did." Olivia hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "I didn't think you'd come." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. She hadn't believed he would show up. Liam swallowed, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I will always come when you need me, Olivia. Always." The next day, at Lily's soccer game, he sat on the sidelines with Ella, watching as their daughter ran across the field with boundless energy. Unlike Olivia, who was precise and careful, Lily played with reckless enthusiasm, throwing herself into every moment with full force. When she scored a goal, she turned to him immediately, grinning as she waved. He stood, clapping and cheering, and she beamed before running back to her teammates. "You're good at this," Ella said beside him. Liam turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "At what?" She gave him a small smile. "At being their dad." Something inside him softened. "I never thought I would be," he admitted. "I thought I wasn't capable of this. That I wouldn't know how to do it." Ella's gaze held his for a long moment. "But you do," she said quietly. Liam looked back at the field, watching as Lily ran up to Olivia on the sidelines, showing off as if she had just won a championship. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Liam had always thought of himself as a man who adapted quickly, someone who could walk into any situation and find a way to navigate it. But nothing could have prepared him for the slow, steady transformation happening in his life. He was no longer just a businessman or a CEO. He was becoming something more. He was becoming a father. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the big moments. It was in the little things. It was in the way Lily automatically reached for his hand when they crossed the street. It was in the way Olivia looked at him now, no longer guarded, but with quiet trust. It was in the sound of their laughter echoing through Ella's house when he tickled them on the couch. He found himself looking forward to every visit, to every bedtime story, to every new thing the girls wanted to show him. He learned that Lily loved superheroes and insisted she was going to be one when she grew up. Olivia, on the other hand, was obsessed with puzzles and would spend hours carefully fitting the pieces together, her focus so intense that even Lily's playful teasing couldn't break it. One evening, after putting the twins to bed, he walked into the kitchen where Ella was rinsing dishes. He leaned against the counter, watching her for a moment before speaking. "How long did you think I would stay?" he asked. Ella dried her hands with a towel before looking at him. "Honestly? I didn't know." Liam nodded slowly. "I don't blame you for that. I wasn't exactly reliable before." She studied him, her expression softening. "People change," she said. "You've changed." He let out a slow breath. "I didn't know I was capable of this," he admitted. "I didn't think I had it in me." Ella tilted her head slightly. "And now?" Liam glanced down the hallway toward the twins' room. "Now, I can't imagine my life without them." A small smile touched her lips. "Good," she said. "Because they can't imagine theirs without you anymore either." That truth hit him hard. He had gone from being a man who didn't believe in family to someone who couldn't bear the thought of being without his daughters. Later that night, as he was getting ready to leave, he heard a small voice from the hallway. "Daddy?" He turned, surprised to see Olivia standing there in her pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, kneeling down. She hesitated before stepping forward, her little hands reaching for his shirt as she rested her forehead against his chest. "Can you stay?" Liam felt his throat tighten. He had spent years chasing things he thought mattered: power, money, influence. But in this moment, with his daughter sleepily holding on to him, he realized none of it compared to this. Yeah, Liv, he murmured, gently picking her up. I'll stay. And he knew, without a doubt, that he never wanted to leave again. Liam had never believed in fate, but sitting at Ella's kitchen table that morning, watching his daughters eat their breakfast with sleepy smiles and tangled hair, he wondered if some things were meant to happen. Maybe he was always supposed to find his way back to them. Maybe he had never really lost them, he had just been waiting for the right moment to step into their lives. Olivia sat quietly, carefully peeling the crust off her toast, her little fingers working with slow precision. Lily, on the other hand, was full of energy, swinging her feet under the table as she talked non-stop about a school project she was excited about. "Daddy, you have to help me," Lily announced, waving her spoon in the air. Liam raised an eyebrow. "Help you with what?" "We have to make a family tree," she said, her face lighting up. "And I want to put you on it." The words hit him like a shock, not because he didn't expect them, but because of how easily she had said it, how naturally she had included him. A few months ago, he had been a stranger. Now, he was her father in every way that mattered. Ella glanced at him, and he could see the way she was watching him carefully, waiting for his reaction. He gave her a small nod before turning back to Lily. "I'd love to help," he said, his voice steady. Lily grinned, satisfied with his answer, before turning back to her cereal. Olivia, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. "Does that mean you're staying forever?" The question was simple, but Liam knew it carried more weight than Olivia realized. He set his coffee cup down, looking at both of them before shifting his gaze to Ella. He had already made his decision weeks ago, but now, sitting here with them, he knew it was time to say it out loud. "Yes," he said. "I'm staying forever." Lily cheered, her spoon clattering against the table as she threw her arms in the air. Olivia, more reserved as always, simply nodded, but the relief in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. Ella exhaled softly, as if she had been holding her breath without realizing it. Later that evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Liam found Ella sitting on the porch, wrapped in a light sweater. He stepped outside, the cool night air brushing against his skin as he sat down next to her. "You meant it," she said quietly, not looking at him. "Yeah," he said, leaning back against the chair. "I did." Ella turned to him then, her blue eyes searching his face. "I spent so long thinking I had to do this alone," she admitted. "I thought if I let you in, it would just end in disappointment." Liam reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I'm not going anywhere, Ella." She studied him for a moment before nodding, her fingers tightening around his. For the first time, there was no hesitation, no lingering doubt. They had found their way back to each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And for the first time in his life, Liam Stanton knew exactly where he belonged. The ending of this story is both emotionally satisfying and deeply meaningful because it reflects real, gradual change rather than an instant resolution. Liam doesn't just step into his daughters' lives and immediately become the perfect father, he earns their trust, step by step, proving through actions rather than words that he's there to stay. His transformation isn't just about discovering that he has children, it's about realizing that love, family, and belonging are things he never knew he needed. What makes this conclusion so powerful is that it isn't built on dramatic declarations or grand gestures. Instead, it's the quiet moments, the bedtime stories, the school projects, the casual way the twins call him daddy, that truly cement Liam's place in their lives. He doesn't force his way in. He integrates into their world naturally, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. Ella's journey is just as important. She spent years believing she had to protect her daughters from disappointment, convinced that Liam wouldn't want to be a father. Watching her slowly lower her walls and trust him again adds another layer of depth to the story. It's not just about rekindling romance, it's about rebuilding faith in someone who had once been absent. The final scene, where Liam promises to stay, isn't just about words, it's about commitment. And by that point, it doesn't feel like a question anymore. It feels like a certainty. He has changed, not because he was forced to, but because he found something more meaningful than success or wealth. This isn't just a love story. It's a story about redemption, second chances, and the realization that the best things in life aren't planned. They're found in the most unexpected places, like a quiet coffee shop on an ordinary afternoon, where a man who thought he had everything discovers what truly matters.